Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mangg. Welcome back to Hanging with Mangg, episode 293. We are playing some Final Fantasy Tactics, of course. That new XCOM little game came out recently, and that was okay. That was decent. And the Gears Tactics came out recently, and that was actually pretty good. A little repetitive and not very pretty linear, really. But still pretty good. But it was like, it's not quite in the upper echelons of tactical RPGs. So that brought me back to Final Fantasy Tactics, one of the best games ever made. And I'm actually playing with a ROM hack, of which there are a fair number of ROM hacks for Final Fantasy Tactics. Some obviously more substantial than others. This is LFT, or Laggy's Fantasy Tactics, which keeps things pretty vanilla, but attempts to rebalance a lot of stuff so that things that were perhaps not quite as good as other things, stuff that most of the time you'd never really play with unless you were just messing around or doing a challenge or something like that. Stuff like that has been buffed to be viable. So the idea is to make everything sort of viable, or more viable. And there are a bunch of other little changes. It also makes enemies, their capabilities are more fleshed out and substantial, which tends to make every encounter tricky, including random encounters. So grinding is actually a lot trickier, because you can't just, in the original game, grinding would be like, you'd leave one enemy alive, and then you would just sort of use a bunch of nonsense abilities on your characters over and over to get JP. The way it is with LFT, you don't have to grind as much. You get way more like JP and XP and stuff for every action. But when you do grind, each one of these encounters is pretty... You gotta be on top of your game. So it's not a difficulty mod per se, but it is certainly more difficult than default Final Fantasy Tactics. So I can't recommend it as, like, if you're just getting into it. But so far it's been pretty cool. I kind of like it. I don't know if next time I play Final Fantasy Tactics I'll use it. Maybe I'll try out some other ROM hack, but it's pretty interesting. Anyways, the other thing that I don't care for is, well, it's not that big of a deal, because you can get a version of LFT that changes the translation of Final Fantasy Tactics, all the text, into the stuff from War of the Lions, which is the better version. But it's not in widescreen, which is a bummer. You don't get the cinematics, which is a bummer, and you don't get the new special characters and encounters from War of the Lions. I mean, by and large, I vastly prefer War of the Lions if I'm going to play Final Fantasy Tactics. But that's the way it goes. Speaking of Final Fantasy, this week on this channel, we have continued Final Fantasy VII Remake, of which I just uploaded part 11. And I want to say that I've recorded through maybe part 20, give or take. Something like that. I mean, I've recorded a lot of videos for it, so it's going to be going on for a while. And now we have the official release date, I suppose, of Last of Us 2, which is coming out June 19th now. So that means, I mean, I'm still not done recording Final Fantasy VII. I haven't beaten the game yet. So that means, we at least have like another 10 videos to upload, which at one every other day takes at least 20 days from now. So I really won't start another LP until towards the end of May. Or I won't start another big one. Which gives us, best case scenario, less than a month. Which means it has to be a Let's Play of like 14 or 15 videos or less. Which is a lot of Let's Plays, admittedly. But yeah, I was contemplating doing the Surge 2, because that came out and I haven't played it. But I don't know, I don't know. Maybe that'll only be 14 or so videos. Maybe it'll be more. Alternatively, I was gonna maybe do the shape-shifting detective, which is sort of the spiritual successor to the infectious madness of Dr. Decker, which I know is not going to be that lengthy, and it's just going to be sort of a goofy, fun little Let's Play. But then the problem with that is that might only be like 7 or 6 videos, and that, it's lining this up with these big release dates can be tricky. So I'm not exactly sure. Maybe we'll just do the Surge 2, and we'll just see how it goes. We also have Metroid Other M, which is going on now. It's not a very long Let's Play. We won't finish it this week, but the following week we'll finish uploading that. And then we'll be done with Metroid, so from then on it'll just be a lot of Dragon Quest, which will go on for probably the next year or so. Because that's a big series, big RPGs, many games. That's what it's gonna be. Probably doesn't excite everyone, but I'm very excited to get through that series and see how play some of these great RPGs. Let me just Google something. Yes. Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the other problem with non-War of the Lions. You miss out on some cool new jobs. Like Dark Knight. Anyways, that's the way it's gonna be. That's the way it's gonna be. Over on the Exploring series, I uploaded a video about SCP-2951, 10,000 years. Which for some reason, you know, you can never predict fucking YouTube. I still have been putting out these videos for like 3 years or something like that. Still have no idea how it works, but for some reason, 10,000 years did really well. It was number one on my last 10 videos. Got like 105,000 views in the first 24 hours. I don't know what, I mean, is it the thumbnail? Is that it? Is that it? You'd think in the first 24 hours, pretty much all the views are based on your subscribers. You know. That's what I would assume. So, you know, subscribers just watch. I don't know. The title, it can't be the title. So I don't know. I can't complain. I just don't understand it. And I also released a video on giants in D&D, which did not do that well, but it's not going to be expected to do that well. And then this week, like I mentioned, I was taking a break, so I prepared a video for the document recovered from the Marianas Trench. And that's it. There's not a whole lot to say about that. I did get a small bump in views on my video about Anantashesha, SCP-3000. And I saw that it was getting a bump in views, and at first I thought it was just the algorithm doing its weird thing, because it does that from time to time, or some video that I've put out in the past, especially if it's already been a popular video. The algorithm will just be like, yeah, sure, here, people should check this out, and then it'll get a small bump. And it seemed about that size, but I saw some comments that were like, does anyone else here after watching the, I think it's Unus Annus or something like that? It's this channel by Markiplier and some other guy. I apologize for the other guy. And they started this a little while back. They just make like a video a day, and at the end of the year, they're gonna erase all the videos, and it's just like some experiment. I don't know. And I didn't really check out any of the other videos, so I don't know exactly all the sort of stuff they're doing. But the video that they're referring to was about like scary things in the ocean. And so Markiplier, of course, is a fan of SCP. And so he brought up SCP-3000. And so I'm just like, you know, skipping through this video to where they talk about SCP-3000. Markiplier goes to Google Images and he types in SCP-3000. And the image he clicks on is the thumbnail image for my SCP-3000 video. Because it's a good thumbnail. Other people have ripped it off and blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's not like I made the thumbnail, but I chose it. And it's funny because when he clicks on that, it brings up the name of the video and it says the Exploring Series, you know, SCP-3000. It's just like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. There's Markiplier. He's got his screen up and there's my channel name. And it's like, oh, that's pretty cool. I can respect that. Not every YouTuber gets... I mean, it's not his main channel, so it's not, you know, there's not that many eyeballs on this, but I thought it was kind of cool. And so then people that watched that video that wanted to learn more, because they didn't really go into that much detail about it, they go onto YouTube, type SCP-3000, and my video is the first result. And, you know, it's the same thumbnail that he was looking at, so it's all good. So, yeah, it was just kind of cool, you know. It's like the YouTuber equivalent of being parodied on The Simpsons or something. It's like, oh yeah, now I've made it. My channel has appeared on a Markiplier video. So, you never know. I mean, that's just how it works. You never know. And it is pretty wild. I mean, it's like the whole thing, everything with the whole YouTube, and it's all just wild. That shit's my job. Fuck. This, yeah, that this SCP thing that most people just, yeah, you know, it's just weird. It's just weird. Nothing else to say. Awesome, but weird. It's certainly not the career that I had envisioned growing up, but because it's basically like a job in broadcasting, I guess, and I never ever thought about that. But it's sort of like a job in horror. It's basically like a job in horror writing. The fact that I do my own narration and stuff, that's incidental. So I guess a job in horror writing, that's more what I imagine that I might end up doing. That's more of what I wanted to do. So it's good. It's all good. So yeah, the document video that'll be dropping tomorrow, but people will probably like that. I can't imagine they wouldn't. And then I'll be working on a video. It's in the 5,000s this week. It wasn't part of the 5,000 contest. It came afterwards, but it's about time travel. It's very highly rated already, so it should be pretty interesting. Yeah. As far as how long do you see yourself doing YouTube? Realistically or ideally? I mean, ideally, YouTube never goes away. And I can just keep doing it. I mean, ideally, like, perfect scenario, probably like another, I don't know, 10 years. And at that point, hopefully, I've earned enough cash that I can just sort of get into investments. And then I can just sort of live off investments. I mean, that would be ideal. And I would still do Let's Plays, of course, but I would be financially stable just through investment stuff, portfolios. Will that actually end up happening? Probably not. It you know, going on YouTube for 10 years in this environment is pretty tricky. So realistically, yeah, I mean, it's almost impossible to say. If I got another, like, 3 years out of it, I'd be pretty happy. I don't think I'd be, like, financially independent at that point, but I'd probably try and pivot if YouTube crashed into, like, audiobooks or something. Or some sort of narration. I don't know. Surely somebody would let me do a commercial narration or something for some furniture store. I don't know. Maybe I'm not that good. I don't know. So, yeah, ideally, you know, YouTube never really goes away, and I can just keep milking the whole system. But it's not a perfectly stable environment. There's a lot of pitfalls and a lot of traps and a lot of concerns. So it's great right now, certainly. Things are looking up and up, but everything can come crashing down. So I'm trying not to be those types of YouTubers that make it big and then they immediately, like, buy a Lamborghini and then their channel just fades away. I'm trying to be pretty responsible and I'm trying to plan for an eventuality that the whole thing goes away. Hopefully not, but you never know. Anyways, for board gaming this week, there wasn't a whole lot. My parents are still just huge into Crokinole. Like, they just love it. They just love it. And there was an article the other day on Polygon that was like, make 2020 the year of Crokinole. And I shared that on Facebook, and my dad reshared it, and he's like, yes, it's incredible. My dad became like some crokinole savant. He's gonna like, he should go into like tournaments or something. It's really like, it's hard to play against him because it's just like I've never beat him, and I probably will never beat him unless he just like blindfold himself. I don't know how he got to be so good so fast. But yeah. My gaming channel. Yeah. As long as YouTube exists, there will be Mangg's LPs. Because there's no concern for like monetization or copyright or anything on this channel. That's why I like it. I don't ever worry about any of that shit. And I've never had like a problem, really. Well, that's not true. I have had to switch channels multiple times because of copyright strikes, but that's been a long time now. I stopped doing like trailers. I'm still fucking pissed about that fucking, oh god, that Getaway movie. That was the most bullshit copyright strike in the history of YouTube. For those that don't know, I used to do a podcast. It's really more like a vidcast, I guess, where I just talked about movies and games and news and stuff. And I was talking about, I think I was reviewing The Getaway with Ethan Hawke and Selena Gomez. And I used like a still image, like a promotional image that the movie had put out there in the video while I was reviewing it. And I was giving it like a positive review, like unlike everybody else. And that still image got me a copyright strike that like forced my channel to limit uploads to less than 15 minutes. And so I had to like move my Let's Plays to a second channel, which was probably this channel, for like 6 months. Just because of like that is the most insane bullshit I've ever heard. I still, yeah, I mean, what can you even say about that shit? So, yeah, it's not like there hasn't been any problems. But since I've just cut out all the other stuff and I just do Let's Plays, I haven't had any issues, and I like it. Played some games in Netrunner with my mom. She really likes Netrunner. I really like Netrunner. But the problem is, like, if I use any deck other than like the most basic bitch deck of just building up massive ice walls, and just the most basic of decks against her most basic of decks. Like, her most basic deck, the only deck she uses, because it's the only one she knows how to use, is just a Shaper Magnum Opus deck, like a starter deck, where you just get out Magnum Opus, you make heaps of money, and you just run like R&D, because nothing can stop you because you have so much money. And you just run R&D until you win. That's like the only deck she really understands. And she can beat, a lot of the time she can beat my sort of Glacier deck, because I simply cannot do anything to prevent her from crashing through all my ice and stealing agendas. If I go for any deck other than that, it's immediately like her chances of winning plummet, because suddenly, there's all sorts of little tricks and little combos that she's just not prepared for, and she doesn't know how to counter or anything like that. And so it's sort of a little boring for me, because it's like I don't want to just play a basic starter Glacier deck every time. But I feel bad for introducing anything more complicated, because then I just kick her ass, and that's not good either. So it's really not ideal. But we don't play that often, so it's not... It is what it is. Yeah. Let's move on to roll Mangg. Last time we had just blown up an orc fleet with a nuclear weapon. And so we were thanked properly by Inquisitor Ovum for our timely intervention. And he gave us some money. He gave us a nice little chunk of change. He gave us a potential job to help out the Inquisition. But other than that, we sort of just went on our way. And Ziggy, through the rogue trader that we worked for, Ziggy gave us a number of potential jobs or opportunities that we could take on, which is usually how he likes to do things, because he doesn't ever want to like plan too much in one direction. It's really not advisable with me playing. So he threw out a bunch of opportunities that we could take, and he really didn't plan for any of these. It's just, let's see where they go and we'll see what happens. So one of them was like another orbital space station that has had some issues with like zombies or something. Another was helping out the Inquisition with their task. Another was going to this hive city, this hive world that has had severe problems with they were like running out of food, or they were having some sort of disastrous scenario, and we could go there to like help out or help rescue people and take them off world or something like that. It's a hive world. There's going to be plenty of opportunities. Or there was like an empty stretch of space that apparently there's nothing there, but Ziggy wouldn't have mentioned it unless there's something. So we could go check that out. Or there's this planet that has a lot of rare crystals on it that we could go mine. It's a planet that like 80% of the surface is in perpetual nighttime, perpetual darkness, and that sort of rare condition allows these crystals to flourish across most of the planet. So we put it up for a vote, we debated, and we decided to go with this nighttime mining operation. So we stopped off at some other station, planet, whatever, and we got some mining equipment and some atmo filters and, you know, basic stuff we might need. And we headed off to this planet. We decided that we need some information on where to find these crystals and how best to mine them and blah, blah, blah. So we decided to go to this sort of like mobile, this mobile camp of miners that roam around the surface of the planet just looking for crystal deposits. And so we arrive, and I say that, you know, I work for the Inquisition. The Inquisition needs these crystals, and so we came here to ask for your assistance in information about how best to mine this. And it's like, could the Inquisition just take all of their crystals and say it's for the glory of the Emperor and the Imperium? And sure. But technically, I'm not an Inquisitor, so I don't want to get involved in all that. And really, you know, I've been reading the Eisenhorn novels, which are the most famous books, I think, about an Imperial Inquisitor. And while there are some Inquisitors that just sit there and throw their weight around all the time to just get whatever they need and want, I like Eisenhorn because he doesn't... He tries to play it a little bit better than that. You know, he doesn't want to stir up trouble if he doesn't have to. So I'm sort of trying to emulate that. This is gonna hurt. So the guy, I think I had to roll or something, and I did fine. So the guy was pretty cordial. He told us a bunch of stuff. And he said basically there are 3 ways of getting these crystals. One is to just go out and mine them manually yourselves. And they tend to be found around like these quicksand environments. So it's pretty dangerous, and even, you know, seasoned miners can often lose crews, whole crews, because they just get swept up with these quicksands. So that's not really ideal. I wouldn't pick that if I had a choice. The second way is that they have these like specialists on this planet that use these very highly trained moles, these animals, to like seek out underground deposits. And they bypass the quicksand, and they basically, you know, go underground and find these sort of more hidden deposits. And apparently these moles are the best way to do that. It's like, okay, we could do that if we wanted to pay some mole guy. But that's not really ideal either. And then there's the third way. And the third way is that across this planet, there are a number of gigantic worms. And inside of these worms' stomachs, or bellies, or whatever you want to call it, these crystals grow. Apparently it's another perfect environment for these crystals. Or these worms eat the crystal, or something like that. I don't know. You kill a worm, it's inside there. And, but they're massive, dangerous, horrible worms, you know, so it's not a simple task. And you'd normally have to have like a whole platoon to try and take down one of these worms. So it's a pretty risky choice. So of course I immediately said, all right, we're gonna go kill a worm. how could we not? I mean, that's obviously the most appealing. It's also the easiest when you consider the fact that we have a spaceship equipped with missiles. It's really a no-brainer. Alright, of course I have to reset because I lost half my team. I don't know if Ziggy really counted on this or not, but yeah, it really was like the immediate thought. So we began just flying across the planet, and I told our pilot, who is also the rogue trader, which I don't think that's normally how it would be, but maybe he's sort of a small-time rogue trader. I told him to keep on the lookout for basically giant holes across the surface of the planet. That would be logically where these worms are hanging out and moving around. And eventually we come across them. These giant holes. And there weren't any worms inside, it was just these giant holes. And it's like, okay, well, what do we do now? Do we fly down into the holes? Hell no, that would be a terrible idea. Don't do that. I told him to just land next to the holes and keep the ship running for like 30 seconds and then lift off again. The vibration should cause a worm to come to the surface. So that's what we did, and sure enough, a worm did come to the surface. It's a big old worm. And so this required some rolling. So, I mean, no matter what option we went with, there was going to be rolling involved. I mean, yes, I suppose this route had the potentially greatest risk. If rolls were really botched, I mean, we could all die from the ship being just eaten and exploding, or, you know, something like that. It's a potential risk, sure. But also potentially the greatest reward and really the least amount of rolls. So it's still our best bet. So, yeah, I mean, we blast it with missiles. We blast it with some, like, bolt cannons equipped on the ship. It's all good. Actually, no, we're blasting with these, like, giant heavy bolt guns. And we're tearing up its face. The worm starts to flee back into the hole, so we shoot some missiles down into the hole after it. And after that, everything is sort of quiet. So it's like, okay, maybe we killed the worm, maybe it got away. Either way, we have to go down there and check. So I don't want to fly the ship down there. We're going to assume that we did kill the worm. So we're just going to we're going to go down there on foot along with this sort of mobile loading platform. This, like, gravity. I called it a skiff. That's really not the right term. I don't know why I was thinking skiff. It's basically like a sled. It's like a gravity sled. A grav sled, if you will. Anyway. The problem is this hole is very steep. It's a very steep decline. And we have these, we have this gravity thing, which will probably just plummet, you know. And it's possible that we could sort of walk down. But if we slip, I mean, it's a rough tumble. No doubt about it. It was looking a little tricky until I remembered a line that Ziggy had mentioned almost in passing last session when we were talking about the power source on the orbital ruin. And we were talking about using it as a nuclear weapon to help out OVO. And Ziggy had mentioned removing the power source as a potential option, or ripping off the entire power room of the orbital ruin and using and tethering the whole room behind the ship and just dragging that along. So the fact that he had mentioned this as a potential option meant that we had tethers on board the ship. And I was like, okay, well, we'll just tether the whole grab sled to the ship, and we'll just slowly let it down. And he said, yeah, that perfectly works, and that's what we did. And it worked absolutely fine. There was no issue. Just fucking summon Odin on my ass. That's great. So we get to the bottom, and it seems like we found ourselves a dead worm. It's not moving. So we begin to basically carve into the side of it. Because we're not at the head. We're not... Well, maybe we're at the ass. We're not... I think we might have been at the ass. So we basically just carve into it with, like, my chain sword and our mining equipment. And we cut it open and we crawl in. And... we're moving through the worm, and we get to the crystals. There is a bevy of crystals. Inside this worm. And so we have two options. We can basically try and mine the crystals ourselves and just try and separate them from the worm to take out, which has its own risks because we don't really know what we're doing. None of us are miners. We've never worked with this stuff before. Maybe there's some issues that we don't know about and we could ruin some of the crystals. So I figured a better option is to basically just cut out the section of the worm containing the crystals and just take the whole mass with us. Because that way we don't have to fuck with the crystals at all. Somebody else can worry about that. All we have to do is just cut out the worm, which we've already done, so it's not like a big deal. And so that's what we did. And sure enough, it was no big deal. It was all good. And so we got a few 100 pounds of crystals. Loaded onto the grab sled. And we retract the tethers, and we climb up back out of the hole with our haul. It's all good, but Ziggy decided, of course, that it can't be that easy. Nothing can ever be that easy, and that's as it should be, I suppose. RPGs are not fun if everything goes well. So in the distance, heading towards us, is a convoy of natives. in vehicles and with armaments and all that good stuff. They're on their way, and they probably don't have good intentions. They likely saw that we killed a worm, and they want what we got, because that's a lot of money. I mean, trust it turned out to be a lot of money. And so we had to think quick. We had to think quick about how best to deal with this situation. We've got these lawless natives that want to take everything we've got, and they have more people and more guns than we do. So how do we deal with this? And if there's one thing that I try to be proud of, is that I can think on my feet in an RPG. So I touched this whole mass of skin and crystals. And I teleported it all into the ship. Lickety split. Leaving an empty grav sled. Now, that means that I went into the ship as well, but I left behind the rest of the group. So they had to sort of deal with the situation without me. And so I told them over the radio, I'm like, look, just say that you didn't find anything. You went down there. The sled is covered in like worm guts, so you can't lie and say you didn't go into the worm. But you went down, you didn't find anything, and you're just heading back home. And if they want the sled because they want something, give them the fucking sled. But if they want to like check out the ship, or they want to take the ship, we're just going to fire it up and we're going to turn the missiles on them, and that's that. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. But I told them what to say. They pretty much said that. And due to some rolling, they did end up taking the sled because, they wanted something. But they didn't search the ship. We didn't have to blow them away. And there was no conflict. And it's... Again, this just goes back to my old thing of, like, most people, when they play an RPG, they're like, yeah, we gotta have combat, we gotta shoot stuff, and they just, it's not a session if you don't have combat. For me, it's like, if I have a combat, I've failed. That is my goal every session, is to avoid all combat, which... I mean, you can avoid combat through just being cowardly. Like, if you, as just your own character, just avoids every fight while the rest of the group has a combat, that's not good. Don't do that. And it's not a perfect goal. You can't avoid every fight. The DM will throw shit at you just to have it. But if I can go a whole session and avoid all the combat, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. So, yeah, we could have had a fight there. We probably would have come out okay. Bloody and bruised, but we probably would have won. And I'm sure some of the people in the group would have enjoyed the fight, and, they build combat characters, and they use guns and stuff. And it's... I mean, I'm conflicted about it, sure. Because it's like, if you build a combat character, which we have several, you are building a character with the intention of having combat because presumably you like combat. And so for someone like me to swoop in and just finesse the group out of combat, it's not really fair, I suppose. From a logical standpoint, in character, you really shouldn't want combat. I mean, people that desperately want to throw themselves into fights usually don't last that long in life. So you really shouldn't I mean, it's an RPG. That's sort of where I feel conflicted. So yeah, I don't know. It's an age-old dilemma for me because I enjoy avoiding combat so much. Because it's such a unique challenge. I mean, you can play a video game and have like turn-based RPG combat. You can do that. And yeah, there are some RPGs where you can avoid combat through skill use or through dialogue or something like that, but it's not the same. It's not the same. You know, passing a persuasion check in Fallout so you don't fight some bandits is not the same as what you can do in a tabletop RPG. Whereas I feel like going through a fight in a tabletop RPG is not that dissimilar a lot of the time to a video game. So that's why I'm drawn to the more social and puzzle solving aspects of RPG rather than the combat, because I feel like combat, you know, I'm doing that now. It's solo, but I'm just doing that now. So I don't know. That's just me. Anyways, we're almost over an hour, so I'll just quickly sum up the end here. We took our haul to a hive world, to a big city, and normally in these types of games like the Sprawl or something like that, we would have to sell our loot ourselves, but we have a rogue trader who hired us. Emphasis on the word trader, so presumably he's good at trading. So we told him to just sell the stuff, and he came back with two options. The safer option, for slightly less money, was to sell it to someone in the government of the planet. The riskier option was to sell it to basically like a nobleman for more money, but you know, there was potential for complications. The money in question, the safer option was for 400,000 credits. The riskier option was 500,000 credits. And so normally I would immediately chime in with my vote. But I find that as soon as I vote, people tend to just go with whatever I say. For whatever reason, maybe they don't really care and they're just like, yeah, sure, that's what he wants, fine. But I decided to abstain from voting until the very end, until everyone else had voted, just to see how people think without my influence. It took a long time. There was a lot of ho-humming with people just waiting to hear what I said. But eventually they ended up voting the way that I was going to go anyway, so that was pretty good. So in the end, we decided to go with the safer option. They decided they didn't want complications and 400,000 was good enough. I decided that my character would prefer giving the money to the Imperial government, or somebody working straight for the Imperium rather than some shady nobleman. So there were no complications. We got the 400 grand, and that's pretty much where we ended. So in the interim, between sessions, we've done some shopping. So I bought like an assault suit, a sawed-off shotgun, a new chainsword, a new drone, some demo charges, some good stuff. And I think next time we're gonna go help out the Inquisition. Ovum's task for us was to go to this planet with like that had sort of been cut off from Imperial contact, and there's belief that the government has been taken over by some mercenary regime, and so we're going to go in there and check it out and confirm some rumors. So detective Inquisition stuff, I like that. Plenty of opportunities to avoid combat, it's perfect. But alright, that's enough for this week. Check out the document recovered from the Marianas Trench video tomorrow. It's a very short video, it's only 12 minutes long, and it's just mostly reading. But it's a great tale, so. And we've got more Final Fantasy VII Remake and Metroid Other M this week. Should be all good. My name is Mangg. This has been Hanging with Mangg. I'll see you fine folks